August 11th, 2024.
And I'm Jeremy Wright. What I think I'm going to do right now is go through each of my tanks. This is tank A. I showed it yesterday on just an update. Um, what I'm going to do is go through all of my tanks after a period of me basically slacking on my hobby. I'm going to show you where I am with each of these tanks, sort of the things that are going wrong, the things that are going right, and what I'm going to do about them. This tank, I talked about it yesterday, so basically I'm just going to go through and pull out a lot of this vegetation. No big deal. I spoke on it yesterday. Boom, take a 55-gallon Central American tank. Boom. Here's tank B, 29-gallon convict cichlid tank. Sorry for the reflections over here. This tank I have probably done less maintenance on than any of my others in recent time, and it's just super stable. Now, the convicts pull Anubias plants up from growing epiphytically on other stuff. They knock rocks down. They frequently rearrange the space. I'm gonna try to get away from the reflections, but we're probably just not gonna be able to do that with the current setup. So I pulled out quite a few convicts and sold them at a swap recently. I gave some to a friend. Right now, it's just time to come through this tank and clean that stuff. Make sure the filter's flowing nicely. It seems to be, so the pre-filter sponge is probably okay. But all of this floating plant matter has just got the tank really dark. So that's what I'll be doing with this one. It's just ugly right now. Tank C, I showed this one a bit yesterday also. It's jamming along, just doing great. Great, like I could clean some of the water spots off the top, but otherwise it's fine. So 3.5-gallon nano tank, tank C, we'll just move along. I didn't misspeak the other day. I said it had an Aqueon filter. It does not. It has an Aqueon light and just like an off-brand filter. That was my mistake and just, jabbering. Moving on. Tank D, this is a 20-gallon tall. There are black mollies and endlers mostly in here. But, it just takes a glance to see what's wrong with this tank. It has guppy grass covering the thing. And this is something that quite a few of basically any tank that gets guppy grass in it is going to eventually look like this. And you'll come to a stage where you just have to pull some out. It was tactically allowing the endlers to breed and stay away, the fry to stay away from the black mollies. At this point, I think I can do with like 1/3 of that mass of the Najas guadalupensis guppy grass. Everything will be fine, and the plants toward the bottom will first off be more visible. The tank will look better. They'll get more light. But that's what I need to do to this one after maybe 2 months of neglect. So, yep, that's where we stand. Tank E is a little 5-gallon and hangs out here in my guest bathroom. This is one of this aquarium stations. And in here are some white convicts, reflection of Mermaid Barbie. And this tank had a recent light failure, so there's not a light on top of it right now. And that's allowed the Pilia, aka aluminum plant, to kind of grow wild. It's just doing its thing. This is a Chinese evergreen that's growing up out of the tank. In the tank, lots of plants, corkscrew val, more Najas guadalupensis, aka guppy grass. There's some little buces, some little Java ferns. There's actually a lot in here, but it's growing without a light for the last 2, maybe 3 weeks. And I need to do something about that. I will do something about that. Growing up and out of the tank, this is kind of a staple around here. It's Mexican petunia. Does really well in growing up out of an aquarium. Also pothos. Lots of you know about that. You're going to be familiar with it. And there are some guppies down in there, so let's just see. Not much to see because similarly, this tank needs to be cleaned out, cleared out, and otherwise it's very healthy. It just, also, this is one of my gravel tanks. So this was originally a crayfish tank, and yeah, gravel only. Tiny little filter, Datu filter. Probably pretty similar to the filter on this. No, actually it's very different, sorry. Very different. But yeah, this is Tank E, Tank Echo, and some of my tools. This is my duckweed scooper. And some of these little things over here are little shrimp jars, shrimp vases, and things like snail jars, stuff like that. Tank F, this is my leopard frog tank. It now has white clouds in it. This tank it doesn't have its own light, so it gets some indirect lighting from other sources, but kind of interesting. Very dark right now. I need to pull some of the floaters off of the top of this. Can't really see what's going on in here, but it is soil under sand, and some nasty reflections again. But in here are white cloud minnows and leopard frog tadpoles and some snails. Tank G's hiding here in my foyer next to Tank F, which I just showed you. The way I remember this one is G's for Guppies, which is just a convention I've used for years. Whatever Tank G is always a guppy tank. Tank F has not always been a frog tank, believe it or not. Now, this tank, I'm testing a Sea Aura light. It's doing okay. This was something I bought as an alternative to Hygger lamps, the planted 24/7 lights, and you know, it does well. I wish it had some more red. I wish the red was controllable. Blue and white are. I have a difficult time resetting the schedule on this automatic lamp though, and that just is what it is. So they're happy, they're healthy. This is also a gravel tank, but it does have soil beneath it. So just a different take on the same stuff. It seems to work pretty well. This tank could use a different pre-filter sponge. You can see the flow is pretty low. And what I need to do to this tank next is just clear all these floaters out. I don't need them. I'll give them away. If you're around Little Rock, give me a shout. I'll give you some floaters. This is a 10 gallon. This is a 10 gallon. And it's just a guppy colony. These are basically mud guppies that hang out in here, and that's fine. They deserve a place to live too, right? Now we're getting back into the cool stuff. So this is Tank F. This is a Central Arkansas Biotope tank that had guppies added in, kind of as an afterthought because they needed a place to live. So generally through the midday, I have a grow light on this side of the tank, and it's got some pretty cool stuff. So feather moss, sorry for that bit of stuff on the glass. Feather moss, interesting stuff. It grows a lot like Christmas moss, but it's sort of establishing. There's Riccia, fluitans, crystal wort, kind of hanging out in different places. There's some stuck down here in the bottom of this hornwort plant, but it's also floating across much of the top of the tank. And most of the plants, actually all the plants in this tank are Arkansas natives. Some came from a collection of one of the herbologists at the Arkansas Herbarium for the university. I had to add some light because this is a fairly tall tank. It's a 37 gallon, and it's got tons of stuff growing up out of the top of it. Just tons of stuff. And recently I actually pulled, these are sweet potato vines. You can see a lot of the leaves are dead. I actually removed the sweet potato and broke off some of the vines, let them hang down into these tanks, but some of them died. That's no big deal. They'll just fall apart, decay, fall into the tanks, and they will fertilize the tanks, and that's no big deal. So as usual, soil under pool filter sand. I'll give you a view of this tank without the grow light. That's what it looks like under normal lighting conditions. And yeah, stuff is just growing as it would. It's not quite jungly yet. There is some interesting stuff in here. Sorry for those reflections, but that's not an Arkansas plant, right? That grew up on its own. It volunteered. Otherwise, the gups in here are pretty cool. This was my orange like flame guppy colony that they're a home brew, but I got some back last year, and I'm restarting a colony for a breeding exercise, and that just is what it is. So 37-gallon tank, same natural substrate type stuff, Arkansas plants, Central American fish, plenty of filtration, but it's kind of a dark tank. Here's tank H. This is another 5-gallon that's sitting out here beside some of these others, and just next to the tank I just showed you. It also has ambient light, doesn't get its own lighting. It has some lizard's tail and some Mexican petunia growing out of the top of it. Recently it had a bit of Tradescantia and pothos pulled from it. Inside here, let's see, this was a guppy tank. I changed it to an Endler tank and removed some Endlers from one of my tubs. And this is mostly just spillover stuff. So there's some really cool stuff in here. There's Riccia, Nana Petite, 2 or 3 types of grasses. But this is an unfiltered, ultra low-tech tank that just basically sits and stews. I probably need to come through, remove some of this Riccia, remove some of the Salvinia, and there's actually, this is our local frog bit to my part of the world. That's a bad example. Let me try to find a prettier one. Yeah, not Amazon frog bit, much thinner, just a different stuff. Cool stuff. But yeah, just a little 5-gallon tank that's hanging out over here doing its thing. Oh, it looks like I want to buy a hang-on back. So in months past, I wrote a note to buy one. I guess I'll do that at some point. Next to that, this tank, this is a, let's see, this is like a 35-gallon, but I don't know exactly the size. It's kind of a cube. One of these hang-on backs is just sitting here. There's not a reason for it to be sitting here. It is just sitting here. So for the purposes of recording, I'll remove it. This tank has convicts and mollies in it. And it's just kind of dark and murky because, like many of my tanks, it's been growing for a while. It is now covered in floaters, and the stuff below it is starting to suffer from that. Now, this tank, being a convict cichlid tank, wasn't really a planted tank. I mean, in the sense that it was never scaped. It was just a place for convicts to hang out. And because of that, I don't think there's a lot to talk about. But what I'm doing here is documenting that I have been away from my hobby and that my stuff looks bad right now. And I've got a lot of work to do. There's cool stuff. I mean, there's this beautiful Tradescantia, more Mexican petunia, and a begonia growing from the hang-on back. But Actually, all of this stuff trailing down into the other tank is growing up out of this HOB. This was the frog tank. But yeah, similarly, I think I'm just going to go through, remove the floaters, allow more light to penetrate down in, kind of clean some of this stuff up, I hope. That's not as much of a priority as the tanks, but these guys are cool. I like my convicts. And here's just one of my workstations. This is also sort of in my foyer. It's a total mess right now. This is my substrate mix. Everything from chelated iron, some Vigoro. This is slow release fertilizer, marine salts, Epsom salts, bone meal, stuff like that. But these things over here, these are breeding tanks for gups. These are, let's see, king tiger cobras, galaxy white mosaics, red metal lace. Those are, I believe, just mutts and endlers. And this is a fish that just are basically culls. So there are like 3 cull guppies in there. Not a lot to talk about over here. And here we have my newest tank. I don't have it labeled, so this is going to be like, I don't know. I should look at my journals to see what letter this is going to be. But this is like a 1.5 gallon. It's a really neat little thing. I bought this at a swap local to here. It's just got a very Japanese look to it. I dug the thing, so I bought it and set it up. Currently, it doesn't have any animals in it. It's been sitting for about 3 weeks, just growing as it is, and I think it's ready for scrimps. Pretty cool little thing though. As I bought it, it had a light attached, and you know what? I think the light's in the wrong color, so let me see if I can adjust that. There's some more red. The plants will like that better. My kiddos like pushing buttons. Anyway, yeah, I like this little thing. I actually got it to put in my son's room, and he was like, I don't want it. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. So, yeah, this little tank's interesting. It needs a top off, as you can see, but it also needs some shrimp. I think I'm going to put some orange Neos in here and let them jam, but no filter, no air, just a bunch of plants and natural substrate, soil under sand, so it will be generating its own CO2, its own oxygen, mostly generating its own nutrients. I'll just need to keep an eye out for algae, and that's really what's up with this tank. So I think I see some down here. I'll need to get in there and pull a bit out. Otherwise, I'm happy with this little tank. I just threw plants in from other tanks, and yeah, it's cool. And now back into my guest bathroom. I'm going to show you a few shrimp jars, because this one is going to probably lose some of the orange shrimp it contains. They're going to be going into that aquarium I just showed you. The little orange shrimp, well, they're in there. There are a bunch of them in there, but they're always hard to find. Glares being a problem, but I've got several of these jars, and they are all unfiltered. A little bit of soil under pool filter sand, lots of plants, and things are happy long term. Here's another one. This is red Greeley shrimp. So they're the same species, but these are kind of red and white mottled. And this little jar, is just so full of plants. We may have a difficult time seeing any of the shrimp that aren't just right up on the top. But fortunately for us, there are some right up here at the top, or at least one, right? So yeah, these little jars just grow so densely, so quickly. Snail jar, and then my cherry shrimp jar. But that's kind of it. So you can see my hobby is in shambles right now. So it's time for me to come through, do major maintenance, clean up a bunch of stuff, and get back to some of what once was. So thanks for checking this stuff. As I said, this definitely isn't a look at my pretty stuff. This is a look at how my pretty stuff has fallen apart in 2 months of me not taking care of it video. And for anyone who's interested, you can watch me bounce back from it. So thanks for that. Hope you guys have a great day. Catch you soon.